Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Opinions, and we're back with another snippet. And you know what? I can't be bothered with this introduction, mate. Let's just introduce our guests, because I am so excited on who we've got on tonight.
Wayne and Janice, aka the Irish Beer Snobs, welcome to the show.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you back on with us again. We were saying just before we started recording that it's probably been 3 years since we've recorded a podcast together now.
Yeah, it's shocking, really.
It is. Considering the technology that we have available to us now. We
as well, though, and we'd taken a break for a wee while. So, you know, good things come in small doses or small packages.
We've all got beers in glasses. So I think without further ado, let's have a little cheers. Let's have a little drink, and then we can talk about the beers that we've got.
Cheers.
So, cheers everyone.
That is just good. Really, really lovely.
So what have you two got, Wayne and Janice?
We've got Whiplash 6 Million Ways IPA. It's 6.6. This is a new one, right?
Yeah, the newest IPA from Whiplash.
Lovely.
It was very nice, but it's got Citra, BBC, Vic Secret, and Centennial. So kind of traditional, not these new funky hops like no Sabro in sight here or anything like that. So
Good.
it's just total juice, but I'm getting kind of a bit of a sherbety finish. You know, like when you kind of get that when you're drinking a gin and tonic and you get the slice of lemon at the end, and it's kind of really a bit pithy and that kind of like little sharpness there at the end. So it's not like, it's definitely got bitterness in there. It looks like New England.
Excellent. Steve, what have you got?
I have got Silver Dollar from Tyne Brewery, based in Newcastle, obviously. It's 4.9% American Pale Ale, US hopped to give citrus flavours, hints of orange peel, and a lasting bitterness. Now, despite it saying it's US hopped, can't find on the bottle or on Untapped which hops are actually used in it, which is a bit frustrating to say the least, but it's giving off big citrus notes. There's lots of kind of candied orange, I'd say, a little bit of grapefruit in there as well, but there's also a bit of a malty toffee creaminess to the finish as well, which kind of to me would suggest that they might have used Mosaic in this, because that's one of the characteristics that I generally pick up from Mosaic.
It's not something I pick up from Mosaic myself, but Mosaic's been a mixed bag this year, hasn't it, for people and their flavor and the flavour profile. So I suppose it depends what everyone's getting from it. It's a little bit different at the moment.
Yeah, but it's a big old 500ml bottle. But it is the one thing that it is really, really refreshing. What are you on, mate?
So I've got a 500ml bottle as well, Steve. American Pale Phoenix from brewery in Sussex, Bedlam Brewery. I have managed to find the bold US hops that they reference on this one. It's Citra, Amarillo, and Cascade. However, for me, I'm getting some of that toffee caramel up front. And it's called an extra American Pale. For me, it's very much a British/English take, traditional, almost a cask version of an American Pale Ale. It's very tasty. It is very refreshing, but in an American Pale, I don't really want the slightly sweeter notes up front. Yeah, 3.9. So not a low start compared to you and Janice, you two.
Our method.
I was going to say you wouldn't expect any less from the snobs, would you, to go in hard? Now, Martin, the beers that you and I are drinking this evening have been kindly sent to us by Best of British Beer as part of their virtual British Beer Festival that they've put together in a box. So there's, is it 12 beers?
Yeah,
a glass, some snacks, and a bit of a tasting guide as well that they sent to each of us, which is currently available from them on the website. We'll put a link in the show notes. And the idea is obviously with all the beer festivals this summer being cancelled or postponed or moved back till next year, is to try and have a bit of a beer festival at home, drinking some of those kind of traditional beers that you generally find at all of the Camera summer beer festivals that you'd have springing up all over the place.
Yeah, the box definitely put me in mind of that kind of regional beer festival, the mix of beers and the breweries. But it's not a bad selection, to be fair. I mean, you've got Sambrook's in there, you've got Lost and Grounded, to name two, or maybe two of the more modern ones. So yeah, it's a good selection.
I'd actually say that the Lost and Grounded was a bit of a surprise in that box for me, alongside all of the other breweries that are in there, because you have got a lot of very traditional leaning breweries, you might say.
Yeah.
And then you've got Lost and Grounded running with Scepter's India Pale Lager that's in there as well. And it does kind of stick out a little bit as being a bit of an anomaly in that box.
Oh, definitely does stick out as an anomaly, but I think it's a good anomaly to have in that box.
But there's definitely something for everyone's tastes in there. That's to be said. There's everything ranging from American Pale Ales to porters, stouts. As you mentioned, one of the beers I'm going to be doing later is a rye beer as well. So yeah, there is a little bit of something for everyone, I think.
Yeah, and the selection I've gone for is probably the selection I would hit up quite early on at a beer festival as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll revisit those as the show goes on, because we are going to try and get through a few of them tonight between you and I. So while we are going to sit back and enjoy our first beer, let's have a chat to Wayne and Janice. Guys, how has the last few months been for you? Obviously, you've lived through the same things that we have in terms of being stuck at home and basically changing your lives completely. How has that been for you guys?
Been an adjustment, like anyone else would say the same, but I guess it depends on the degree. Like I'm kind of fortunate enough that I work in finance, like that sector is deemed essential, and there's no prohibition us going into work, even though my current employers have plans that if things kick off or lock down again, we'll all be able to work from home with the equipment and technology to be able to do it. It's just a strange time. I think we try to make the best of it as the best you can of it. Like the kind of restrictions kind of got relaxed June-ish. Mm-hmm. So you were able to kind of go up and see family and visit friends, while socially distant, of course. But up to that point, it was pretty grim. It's gradually got a little bit better, but as we're kind of discussing off air, there's kind of been recent spikes here. I'm not sure what it's like in the UK at the moment, but our daily average has kind of doubled in the last 3 weeks, which is concerning.
And it's mostly our age group that it's where it's at now, whereas at the start it was mostly nursing homes, so it was like the median age would have been 70s, 80s, whereas now it's late 30s. So it is a bit worrying again. For me, lockdown was fine because I was actually lucky enough where I work in a job that has an online store. So I was still able to go in and fulfill orders and things like that. But at the same time, it was really, really tough because I couldn't see my friends, couldn't see my family. And as you know yourselves, we all have people who are vulnerable, and it was just really, really difficult not being able to see them. It's a bit easier now, though, because life seems to have gone back to a little bit of normality, especially for, me, because I'm back full time now, 5 days in the shop, and I can call over to see my mum and dad. And now it's much better, but it's still, there's that little bit of you wondering what's going to happen in the next few days, next few weeks. Who knows? It's all uncertain.
So you mentioned there's been a kind of spike again recently.
Yeah.
Are you guys still locked down in terms of your hospitality industries as well? Are pubs and restaurants open again now? Because but basically what I'm trying to get at is that spike because people are, like we've seen over here, are simply ignoring what they're being told to do in terms of keeping themselves safe?
Well, I think what happened from previous podcasts we and conversations we've had in the past, Irish pubs are very different. Like 90% plus of them are individually owned by a family or an individual person, whereas pubcos would represent maybe 10% of the overall pubs in the country. But I think this is part of the problem that we're facing now, is that the government differentiated between restaurants that can serve alcohol, which would include a whole cohort of gastropubs that would allow them to trade on a restaurant license, so to speak, while serving alcohol with limited sittings, as in you're only allowed to be in the bar for an hour and 45 minutes. You had to spend at least €9 on what they would term a substantial meal. But like human nature, the majority of people are compliant, but human nature would be there'll always be that group that'll go in, they'll maybe buy the food, they won't even eat it, and they'll just use the hour and 45 to get absolutely tanked up. But as a result of this separation of the types of pubs, what you've seen is that your traditional wet pubs that only serve alcohol and beverages, don't serve any food apart from a packet of potato, they're all closed because the government, I guess, and the public health advice is absolutely terrified that, you know yourself, you have a few drinks, your inhibitions come down, social distancing goes out the window, you start shouting and singing. They're worried about clusters appearing out of pubs, but there's been no data to suggest that clusters have even been appearing in the restaurant settings that are there at the moment. Where the spikes have been in the recent past is very similar to what happened in Germany. The meat processing and food processing plants, where you'd have a lot of people working very closely together in temperature controlled environments, which is a perfect breeding ground for the virus in terms of it's cool. Everyone, loud machinery, shouting, and it'll spread. And there's probably been about 400 or 500 cases in the last 2 weeks attributed to that alone. So there's obviously other concerns, like people are obviously all living in bedsits, and there's 5 of them living in a one bed apartment and that kind of stuff. And it's highlighted again, I suppose, the real cost of low cost food. People coming here getting paid minimum wage or slightly above, no sick pay, no benefits, and often they're too terrified to report they've got symptoms for fear of losing their job. They won't get sick pay. So it's a real mess, to be frank. But what we've seen is the government implemented county-wide lockdown. So Kildare, Laois and Offaly would be 3 counties that would have a lot of food production in them in that way. They're on a 2-week lockdown, which is meant to end this Sunday night coming. But I don't know. They haven't made an announcement yet about if they will end it, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, it's frustrating though, because like there are some days, busy work days, and I'm like, fuck me, I'd love a drink, but I can't go to the pub, can't get a pint, but we could go for a nice meal if we wanted to in a pub that serves food.
I mean, to be fair, I could do €9 on Tato crisps.
Cheese and onion or salt and vinegar. And don't say smoky bacon.
No. It's got to be between those two. I would start off with the salt and vinegar, but I would always gravitate to the cheese and onion the more I drink.
Yeah, in fairness, the Castle Lounge we were in shortly after it happened, like you just sometimes got to admire the gallows humour. As soon as the government made the announcement about €9 spend on food, the first thing they did was they dick it up like a really good fake menu, and it was like it's like artisan farmhouse cheese with smoked ham on a toasted sourdough bread. So basically, it's the toasted ham and cheese sandwiches we had that night in the province, and it's basically €9. You kind of have to admire that gallows humour, but the inequality of it all really, to me, as a beer enthusiast, has really highlighted the divisions that obviously operate within the relevant lobby groups, because it screamed to me as an outsider looking in that the bigger publicans or groups that have maybe more than one establishment that have the ability to serve food were more than willing to there's no solidarity there. They were more than willing to proceed without the rest of their fraternity being able to open at the same time. And it's very disappointing to see, like, as Janice said, I love used to going into the town, waiting for Janice to finish work on a Saturday evening, and I'd be in the pub having a pint of Guinness, reading the paper, waiting for her to finish work. Can't do that at the moment, but you know, the government's prioritised, they want to get the schools reopened and they don't want anything to jeopardise that. And the decision has really come down to what looks like a binary choice. We either allow the pubs reopen and we see what happens, or we delay the pubs reopening long enough to get the schools back up and running and see what happens there first.
And to be honest, I can't understand why the pubs can't be open if there's going to be guidelines put in place like there is for restaurants.
Yeah, I agree.
We know, like, there's loads of shenanigans happening over here. You just have to go and look at what happened in Dublin the other night. It was all over Twitter. It's made the news. And so basically there was a pub in Dublin who the barman was hanging out of the bar and free pouring shots into people's mouths. Patrons weren't wearing masks, and it was a brunch that had been organised by an influencer, and it just really, really riled a lot of people up the wrong way. Which
Yeah, but it was on the BBC News over here as well, so it's travelled over to this side of the Irish Sea as well.
Yeah.
It's just not what anyone needs, is it?
No.
It's such a it's a really for those places which are desperate to get their doors open and would do their utmost to do the right thing. It's a kick in the teeth.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there was that country pub down in the news just last week. The pub is, I think this would have been 4th generation. It's had to close the doors and they'll never reopen.
See, and that won't be the last one.
No.
That won't be the last one. And it was just so sad to see people actually willingly drink from the bottle. It was like, I can't believe you're doing this generally at the best of times, but this isn't the best of times. And people
But the day they chose to do it was the day that all of the pubs rallied together for the hashtag support, not sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then that happens.
And that happens.
It took away all the good work that social media campaign was highlighting.
Yeah.
They kind of look, if all they want is a clear plan from the government, and if there is a clear plan and they're told, look, we're not going to be able to reopen you until September, October time, that the government does the right thing and puts in place the necessary financial supports for these sectors. Like, a lot of them are still having to pay insurance premiums and other things. That how are you meant to pay them long term if you've got no cash coming in the door? Like, it's the thing of optics again, though. Like, the reason the pubs got fought, like a lot of pubs, has to be said, voluntarily closed down before lockdown came. And I remember listening to a couple of your podcast episodes earlier in the year, and similar was happening there. A number of bars volunteered and said, look, you know what, we can't guarantee social distancing or whatever here, so we're going to close voluntarily. But then you had like scenes similar to last weekend. You had scenes like that just before St. Patrick's Day in Temple Bar in Dublin, where that optically, there's a very nanny state approach to government legislation of alcohol in Ireland, surprisingly. And that would have just given them all the ammunition they need to go close the pubs straight away, because the optics just look terrible. And again, the optics look terrible again. And, you know, like any kind of chance, the 31st of August was when they're meant to be reopening. I'd say there is no chance of that happening.
But on a lighter note, the hotels are opening.
Okay, well, I mean that's good news. I mean, over here, as of recording, pretty much we've had a further relaxation. So things like temping bowling alleys, so some of the remaining beauty treatments can be taken care of now, and I think casinos. So I think pretty much the only thing left is nightclubs, which thankfully we seem to have not wanted to reopen.
You say hotels are opening, so does that also mean that hotel bars are opening? So do you think you're going to see people kind of abusing that as well, and just basically drinking in hotels?
The hotels are open. Hotel bars are not, but if they serve food, they are.
Okay.
Yeah, the same restrictions apply.
Yeah.
Right.
So like we I don't know if when we go down to Kilkenny, if we can go into the hotel bar after a meal and sit there and have a drink. I've absolutely no idea. So I'm just going to bring a regular drink with me.
Seems to be the way to do it. Yeah. So over the last few months, much like the rest of us, you've probably got very used to enjoying a beer at home. Ordering beers online, that sort of thing. Yeah. Have there been any real standout beers for you in that period?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favourites. I'm actually going to drink a beer from this brewery next. It was a dark mild, and we ordered it. We were actually lucky enough to order it from the brewery directly. Mm-hmm. We were able to order a mixed case. Now, it's a brewery that I really, really love anyway. But dark mild was a standout for me, and it's from Four Provinces Brewery, which are based in Kimmage in Dublin.
Yeah. So they actually have you'd have to see. if you saw the size of the brewery, you kind of get it's tiny. It's like
Tiny.
It's very small brewery at the back of the. They have a pub as well, so they sell their own beers and a couple of macro offerings for the local customers. But they started selling direct online, and I think it was like 24 cans for €60 delivered, which I think was very reasonable. The Dark Mild and the Robust Porter were two standouts from the box. Dark Mild is a style that very, very rarely gets brewed over here. I think I can only count maybe less than half a dozen examples in the last 5 or 6 years, and it was just really good. Like we were kind of campaigning that once normality resumes, that if they kicked a few into casks for a few of the pubs around the city centre, like Underdog and the Galway Bay pubs and things like that, that you'd go out of your way to have a couple of pints of it because it was just really, really good.
I was going to say mild had to be an unusual and a brew style which isn't brewed very often over there, because it is very much suited to the cask way of serving as well.
I'll be smashing on cask.
Yeah, really, really good.
Then the other one, our other go-to, was Ace of Haze by
Blacks and Kinsale.
Kinsale.
So Sam and Maud Black, we've known them since the very beginning of their brewery back in 2013. But they brought like a 4.2% New England IPA laced with Citra, was it Mosaic, Cryo hops and everything. Like it was just 4.2%. And I was just out going, it's a smashable ticking one. All the boxes, has bags of flavour. It's actually easy to drink a good quantity of. It's like a perfect barbecue beer. You could sit there, drink 6 or 7 cans of it, and you'd be like, yeah, this is lovely. That was a really good beer. I'm trying to think, was there others?
Another one of mine, a bit controversial, is a Pilsner called Manislav from Tesco at $1.50 a bottle.
That's not controversial.
That's not controversial. We've got the Rhinebecker King on here.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and that's our Sunday sipping.
We always like an Ale Rhiney, but Manislav is very much a traditional Czech style Pilsner, made by a brewery in Dundalk. So it's made by what they call the Piers Lyons Brewery now. So they were Alltech previously. So they make it exclusively for Tesco, and it's like €1.49 a bottle. And like I think the Beer Nut was tweeting about it, and Aaron, the guy who writes for the Star, he was like, "Oh yeah, you have to try it." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I must give it a go." And picked up a few bottles. And I'm like, "Bloody hell, that is
it's lovely,
really good for watching the footy."
They're my 3.
God, now you've put me under pressure. Because Ace of Haze was definitely my standout beer of the year so far. I've definitely had some exceptionally good beers. Like, I've revisited a lot of beers as well. I've taken the opportunity to go back and try beers like that I would have drank previously. Boom is it's an old beer, but we absolutely drank loads of it as well. But again, like you're trying so many new beers, it's almost impossible to keep up. Like I play golf at the weekend and I go into the off license and I'm like, oh, what new stuff has he got in? And I'll be picking off the shelf, and then I'll go, yeah, I'll take 5 or 6 of these like Scraggy Bays by Kinniger and other beers to have there. And it's been great to be able to see so many of the Irish breweries in particular pivot to small pack really quickly, enabled by like we've a very good mobile canning company over here that has very good nationwide coverage, but then pivot to online sales as well. I think that's been probably a lifeline and game changer for quite a lot of them. I know from chatting to a couple of the guys, they definitely were like, if we didn't have it, the lights would have probably been turned off.
And I think that came across on because you guys also brought back your podcast during lockdown, which was great to hear you guys doing that again. Both Martin and I have said on many occasions we're great fans of what you do with your podcast. But I thought it was really interesting the way that you brought different people in from different breweries to talk about their experiences and how they had changed. And there was the one chap, and I can't remember which one it was, but was essentially saying that he was kind of went from brewing beer to putting it in small pack to running an online shop, and then all of a sudden he was also fulfilling other breweries' beers as well as part of that online shop.
That would be Liam Tutty from Dead Centre Brewing. They not joined forces, but he set up the beercloud.ie, They're based down in Athlone in basically the Midlands, and he was able to work with all the local breweries to him to be able to basically distribute to customers from his premises.
Yeah, and then a load of other breweries from all around the place that might not have nationwide distribution were like, can we jump in on that? So Beer Cloud is like, I think Liam said he was like, it was like an idea that spawned out of nowhere, and he didn't expect it to grow legs in the way it did. But he's reopened his brew pub now, which also serves really good pizza, and he's keeping Beer Cloud going. So and as he said himself, he's not doing Beer Cloud to make money. He's happy just to cover his costs or whatever. But
it's getting those breweries beers to the customers that probably would never have tried them.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be a lot of people that wouldn't have been able to try St. Mel's beers and like other breweries that he has, and it's great to see because he's done really well, really, really well.
Do you think this time has forever changed the way that breweries will do business in Ireland? Because I think Martin and I would both agree that we think things are going to have changed over here as a result. Certainly we saw a lot, much like yourselves, we saw a lot of breweries jump into the online market very, very quickly who had never even thought about it before. But do you think some of those changes will stick and continue to be part of the Irish beer scene now?
I certainly hope so, because I don't know how comfortable that I personally would feel when the pubs do reopen, and how comfortable I would feel about going in for a drink right now. So I'm actually really enjoying being able to buy my beers locally or directly from the brewery and being able to enjoy them at home. So I do hope that they continue that trend where they have their online store and they don't let that go. I just hope that when the pubs do reopen, they won't forget their online store.
Yeah,
because they've all done so well, and like even through Beer Cloud, there was the other guy Brian that we had on from Craft Beer Community. There was a few virtual beer festivals that were really cleverly done, where they curated a box of 12 beers. They had the breweries involved as well, and it was a great Saturday afternoon during lockdown when you had absolutely fucking nowhere to be. You were just able to enjoy these beers, see some friendly faces. I'd like to think that would continue, but there hasn't been one for a while.
No, and I think Brian just put out a save the date there the other day for first weekend in September. But I think there's kind of two things to it. The question of, like, the brewer's license in Ireland gives you very specific trading conditions, and whether all were 100% in compliance with that license is one question. And the second question is, would the relevant authorities, e.g. the revenue commissioners, Inland Revenue, be looking to prosecute businesses for trying to stay alive? In the current climate, probably you wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, but if they continue, if things kind of return to normal by the end of next year, then you could see that being policed a lot more strictly. But you just see I suppose, crisis generates innovation. You saw a lot of guys partnering up with licensed premises. So Stone Barrel, one of our favourite breweries in Dublin, they teamed up with 57 The Headline, and they were able to use 57 The Headline's license to be able to sell beer. So technically,
massive shout out to Jeff and Maura.
Yeah, Jeff and Maura, legends. The technicality of it is a brewery can only sell direct to a customer 19 litres of beer under the current manufacturer's license. So it's, as you can imagine, that's a large quantity of beer. That's going to be 40 mil cans at least.
Yeah. So at the beginning, there was, you had to buy 3 cases off some people.
You definitely saw that, and there are still some, like, I suppose this is the difference of interpretation of the law and whatever. Like, this is my interpretation of it. But at the same time, I really hope that breweries continue to sell direct, but also I hope it gives fucking publicans the kick up the hole they fucking need to stop crying about support local when they don't support their own local fucking businesses. And I'm sorry, but I'm extremely passionate about that. It's the hypocrisy of the position that does my head in even more. It's like, it wouldn't take a big deal for a local pub here to getting a couple of cases of 500ml bottles and put them in the fridge, and they've got a year's best before date on them, and they'll sell, and encourage your staff on how to sell them and talk about the provenance of the product. But they're all bleating on about supporting local and all this kind of shite. But like, lads, look in your own backyard as well. Sorry.
Ran over.
No, don't apologise. I was wondering when that might happen, having seen your tweet at the weekend anyway, or your thread, to be more precise.
Yeah.
That is a good point, well made. I don't think on one hand you can say support local and then not do some small part yourself when you do have the opportunity.
Yeah.
So, no, I think it's a good point, well made there, Wayne. Have you noticed Janice has already cracked open her next beer, Steve?
Yeah,
Well,
why, come on.
I've been sat here for the last 10 minutes or so waiting for an appropriate time to crack open mine, because mine evaporated.
Oh, sorry, I didn't wait at all.
from the glass. I'm gonna give some final thoughts on the beer that I had just while you're finishing yours off there, Martin. It was really, really enjoyable. Just loads of citrus and like I say, that pithy orange grapefruit notes running through it. A lovely balanced bitterness on the finish. Just really, really refreshing. Quite happy with that. The Tyne Bank Silver Dollar. Now I thought I'd had this before on one of the occasions I'd been to Newcastle, but the oracle that is Untapped tells me no. So this is my first taste of this, and it's,
Well, you definitely haven't had it then. Simple as that, Steve.
No. So
I look forward to that. So we've got the same selection in our respective boxes, and actually just to reference what we said earlier, there's actually 14 drinks in the box. It says 12 beers, 1 artisan cider, and 1 craft lager. So there's actually 14 in the box.
Oh, okay.
plus the glass, plus the peanuts. So yeah, it's not a bad selection, and I would say 2/3 of those are 500 milliliter bottles.
Easily, yeah.
So, final thoughts on my one from the Bedlam. Never quite got past those sweet malty notes, which sort of took away from the American pale element of the beer for me. So, like I said, 500 milliliter bottle, it was a little bit of a struggle, especially as it warmed up in the glass. Maybe a pint of cask in a beer garden, I might have different thoughts about it. But it wasn't a massive win for me, that one.
Oh, see, now I tried that one at the weekend and I really, really enjoyed it. I found it really refreshing, really zingy on the citrus notes.
Well, we have to disagree sometimes, Steve.
Yeah, I suppose so. But much like yourself, we've got all these beers. We're trying to work our way through and give as much of our thoughts on them as possible. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Snob, you've both moved on to your next beers down there.
Yeah.
Janice, that porter looks delightful in the glass.
They've
Yes.
got porter envy.
It's 6.2% robust porter from 4 provinces. It's the shit. It's really good.
Excellent.
I really want to crack out a whiskey with it as well.
Go for it.
It's a Monday night.
Hey, party time!
Wayne, have you moved on to something else, or are you still on the same?
No, I demolished that 6 million ways.
It was a really lovely beer, actually.
Really, really good beer. I've moved on to a random beer that was in the fridge. It's been lying there a while, so I don't really have great expectations for it. It's Sierra Nevada's 40th anniversary, Hoppy Anniversary Ale. So I don't even know what to expect, but Sierra Nevada Pale is the king, the original king.
Yeah, so you would hope that's got some pedigree behind it, hasn't it?
Hope that heritage kicks through, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think Martin referenced that I might have some porter envy. I am also doing a porter next. I've got a Postman's Knock from Hobsons. This is a rich ruby porter at 4.8%. Martin, what are you on to next?
I've got definitely a traditional stout, Titanic Brewery, 4.5%. It's just described as a traditional roasted dry stout, and referencing the Oracle of Untapped. I have had this twice before, enjoyed it twice before, but both on tap. But not since February 2016 have I tried this beer.
Oh, so a bit of a revisit for you.
Definitely a revisit
on this one. Well, let's get in again, guys. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. I'm definitely getting a whiskey.
Janice has briefly exited the recording to get whiskey.
Well, while Janice is getting her whiskey, shall we rattle through the news this week? First up was a story that you sent over to me, Martin, which was something that you picked up about the best places to live in the UK for a pick of the pints. Now, this is some research that has been undertaken by Mojo Mortgages, who have worked out the best areas to move to if you want to live in the best place for a pint. They analysed over 50,000 pubs across the UK and worked out the number of pubs per square mile in each location. So coming out on top of this particular table was Portsmouth with 12 pubs per square mile. In second place was Brighton with 11 pubs per square mile. Third place, Norwich, also with 11 pubs per square mile, and then Bristol with 10 pubs per square mile. Now, this list goes down to the top 10. And interestingly, no London on this list.
I guess there are parts of London where you can go a decent distance without coming across the pub. I mean, I suppose what I couldn't get from that survey, Steve, the results of that survey, was the quality of pub or the quality of drinks being served. So I know they said Portsmouth, but I've never really heard Portsmouth being referenced as a beer city destination.
No, but the other three are. So
Yes.
Brighton, Norwich and Bristol are all recognised as being destinations for good beer and good pubs.
Did Manchester make the top 10?
Manchester was in 10. So after I'll run down the full top 10. So Bristol was 4th, Liverpool 5th, Dundee 6th, Nottingham 7th, Oxford 8th, Worcester 9th, and Manchester in 10th.
See, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a bit surprised Manchester being down in 10th. But, you know, again, if Manchester's only made 10th, London hasn't even made the top 10. And there are some other cities there. Leeds hasn't made that top 10.
Well, there's no Birmingham.
No Newcastle.
Yeah. Well, there is full data and methodology available if anybody's into their research and stats. And we'll link through to that in the show notes so you can have a read through that and see how they came about that decision.
I look forward to the summary from Sean.
I'm hoping for a summary from Sean as well on that one. Now, the second story in the news is also going to be our feature for Hopinions this week as well. And this is Brew London have launched the UK's first socially distanced beer festival, which will take place in London over the August bank holiday weekend. There'll be over 50 breweries pouring at the summer sessions, which will be held at the Printworks in London. They've created additional space, transport options, and outdoor and indoor seating. And the days will be split into 2 sessions, 12 to 4 and 5 till 9. You have to book a table in advance, which is priced at £60 for a minimum of 6 people. You're asked to give an arrival time for your table, and then it's basically all table service, isn't it, for the beers that you want?
Yeah, they have also, apparently there were quite a few inquiries about tables for 4, so they're looking into that as an option as well. And split within those sessions that you referenced, Steve, you can also do indoor or outdoor as well. But they do note on there about the outdoor, if the weather takes a turn for the worse, it's limited shelter from the umbrellas above the tables, and they can, at the discretion of the event, move people inside. But again, presumably they'd have to have an element of extra space available to do that should they need to. I found a few things interesting on here. One was the session finishing, the evening session finishing at 9 o'clock, Steve. Quite early for a beer festival.
Yeah.
So they're obviously taking that approach of, well, we don't want people being here till 11 o'clock or something. No pre-buying for your beer. So you're not doing any sort of all-in tickets. And as far as I can work out, I think the pours come in 2 serves, half pints and 2 third pints. So, if you read the general terms and safety procedures and you read all the information, there's a lot. I mean, I'm looking at my work monitor now, which is a fairly sizable beast, and I still can't read from top to bottom all on one screen, all the terms and conditions and the safety references that they've got on there. But perhaps we can get into that a bit more as we talk about the actual poll itself anyway.
Well, yeah, because it was that news article that did actually prompt this week's question.
Opinions, 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 opinions.
Which was simply, would you go to a beer festival yet? So we had 774 votes on this one. 74.4% of people said no, 25.5% of people said yes. Let's run through some of the comments that we had, and then we'll get into our thoughts on this as well. So first up from Bullman's Beer Reviews at Greg Bullman. Yes, provided it was local, I could go early to avoid peak crowds, and the festival organisers were upfront with what to expect there. From Chris Elston at Elston's Beer Blog, I think it's potentially still a bit too early for people to commit to going to many forms of large gatherings, beer festivals included.
From Simon Webster at Bees_boy, it's a no from me. Although something like the Ealing Beer Festival with the beer in large marquees while most people drink outside in a beautiful park would have tempted me. From Paulie G at Can I Get a P? Oh, can I have a little taste of that? I don't want to spend tokens on something I might not like. I feel like a hint of sarcasm came with that one.
Just a little bit. And that was backed up by Jake Overton at Jake O'Beer. It's the same when I used to go to the Reading Festival or the like. You always get festival flu. And from your boy, Rob Edwards at Rob Edwards 90, I have tickets for a festival that was rearranged for November, but I just can't see it being able to go ahead safely, especially not with the current trend of local lockdowns.
From Michael at Bring On The Beer, wait until it can be done properly. Pubs being open is nice, but it's still artificial and disciplined, not free, easy and familiar. Those days will return when they and we are ready. From Justin Mason at 1970s Boy, I went to one yesterday at Brentwood Brewery. Socially distant tables, socially distanced queuing, very well organised, and everyone was very sensible. The fact that they have a large outside area on a very hot day helped a lot, as there was no inside seating at all.
From Miles Lambert at Miles Lambert, every inch of me would absolutely love to be sat in the midst of a throng of happy, friendly drinkers enjoying some great quality beers from great breweries. But as I've barely left the house for months, it feels way too soon to feel comfortable in such a scenario. Shame. And then from Laura at Laura31, I totally agree and I'm not ready to go to one yet. But it does raise the point that social situations are never risk-free at the best of times. And if we're now waiting to feel that way, maybe we're being unrealistic.
And the final two, from Phil Hardy at Philard. Of course, it's going to be perfectly safe as long as they have implemented safety guidelines. Most beer festival goers behave impeccably, never getting incapably drunk, sharing beer glasses, vomiting, pushing and shoving at bars. What could possibly go wrong? And from Tyne at the Bar Pod, Bristol Craft Beer Festival looks like it's going ahead on the 11th to 13th of September, which seems way too early for me. But I've heard that they need the council to shut them down or they can't claim on the insurance. Not that they should risk lives for money in brackets.
It's an interesting one to finish on, isn't it?
Very.
I'm sure we'll come back to that. Mr. and Mrs. Snob, I'm guessing you feel like you're many months away from even the suggestion of a beer festival happening in Ireland, seeing as your pubs aren't even open yet. How let's just suggest let's use a festival that we're all very aware of and we've drunk at on many occasions. Yeah. Let's if Indie Man was going ahead in October, would you be coming to it this year?
Absolutely no chance.
No, I just no.
I could wear a mask, a visor, a fucking body condom, and I still won't go.
Body condom? There, folks, is an image for you on Thursday morning when you listen to this podcast.
I have no idea what that even is.
Just absolutely no chance.
No, I think...
No way.
I think it comes down to two things. I think...
For me, a beer festival is wanting to be able to be there with my friends, and we all know that we've a lot of friends in the beer world, and you just can't enjoy those surroundings anymore. Not right now.
Yeah, I kind of think individually, it's all about individual responsibility at the end of the day. And I think if 90% of people are doing the right thing 90% of the time, we'll be okay. But the reality is, you go to a situation like Indie Man, like remember being in the dark room where Beavertown had the DJ playing that time, and we got snuck into the next session, and it was still you were like sardines down in that pool at that time. I just don't see it as even for Ireland. I can't, all the big music acts have already scheduled for summer 21. I don't even see that being realistic at this moment in time. But who knows? Donald Trump could be right. It could just evaporate into the air, but I doubt that as well. I think for me, it's two things. One, you can be responsible for yourself, but you can't be. It's like you're in a car accident. If someone hits you, you can't control that. So if you've got some guy coughing and breathing all over you while you're queuing for your what's the name of that beer I had? Yellow Belly, was it Yellow Belly Sunday? They're queuing for your Yellow Belly Sunday at Indie Man, and some guy's breathing all over you, and they could be infected. Like, you can't control that, no matter what steps you take yourself. And secondly, I think everyone's inhibitions just go out the fucking window when you've had a few beers. Like, you know what we're like. We all get huggy and died and said, "I love you guys," like that when we were in O'Neill's that night. It's just like that's what it's about. It's the friendships we have. While Zoom is no substitute, it's great to be able to talk to people and see them and, you know, have a bit of fun with them. And, you know, it's too soon for us anyway. If the question asked was, would you go Indie Man if it was on next month? No, I wouldn't.
Martin, what about yourself? Is it too soon?
Well, we had a little conversation about this when we first saw this being released, because it's also over the August bank holiday weekend, isn't it? So literally the weekend before what is known as the summer school holidays will be over come the end of the August bank holiday weekend. My initial reaction was, good God, no. Why would I even think about doing that? And probably all things being considered, I probably think the same. Equally, I quite like the sound of some of the bits being put in, and this probably is my age is a factor. 50 next year. I quite like the idea of booking a table for 6 people and only spending the time with people I know and like. I quite like the idea of not queuing at the bar. I quite like the idea of not having to spend 60 or 70 quid on a ticket in advance, and just having half pints or 2/3 pints during the day, table service. So really the only time I need to get up, presumably, is coming in, going out and going to the toilet. So there are actually some aspects of this beer festival that I've seen described here that I actually quite like the idea of it. And I think because they need to land this, and let's assume no local lockdowns occur in the next couple of weeks in the UK, and it goes ahead, they will want to land it. They will police it. And to be honest, they will police it better than some of the pubs I've been to. I reckon they'll be quite very strict about it. They'll have security there. They will be paying to land this. So I'm probably still be reticent to go, but part of that reticence for me would also be getting to the Printworks site in London is more than one form of public transport as well. So there's maybe a couple of bits of public transport there and a couple of bits back. So that's 4 separate journeys of public transport for you and I, Steve. But like I said, I think there are some parts of it that I would quite happily engage in after this time has passed, or as things maybe aren't as serious, or whether the medication is better. I'd be very interested to see how it goes. I mean, they must be investing quite a lot in this, Steve. Like I said, I think they'll want to land it, and I think the Bristol Craft Beer Festival that was mentioned, I imagine they'll be doing it on a very similar kind of way of doing it, a similar setup. So, like I said, actually, I think if I took COVID-19 out of it and this festival existed, I'd be all over it.
I very much like the idea of not having to get up and queue for beers and having beers brought to me, because I'm largely inherently lazy, and not having to stand in a queue for 10 minutes to wait for a beer and just have that beer brought to me when it's ready sounds great. And much like yourself, you know, being able to just almost select 6 people that I want to spend the time with, because, you know, I'm not the greatest fan of people at the best of times and crowds and that sort of thing. So it's quite nice to be able to think that you could sort of like keep to within your own group. For me, it's just going to be, and I think probably much like yourself, I've been in pubs recently where people are told they've got to sit at tables, and it takes about 15 minutes before they start moving between tables and going and see their friends at another table. And it's just, for me, like you say, are that festival going to police that? And if they see people table hopping, essentially, are they going to stop it?
Personally, I think they will, or at least they'll try to. I think we can also reference what Wayne said earlier. You're there for 4 hours. Meet up afterwards. Whether that be somewhere outside or somewhere that lets you, and then you become a different crowd, and you have 2 different tables somewhere else. Surely you can get through 4 hours without table hopping. I don't understand why you couldn't.
I think it just happens. I think it happens, and people can't help themselves, and that's.
Oh, fuck that! They can help themselves.
Human nature, like we're seeing in Ireland in particular at the moment, you're seeing copious examples of it, and like you guys had the beach in Brighton absolutely packed, and various other examples, and so on. But like realistically, level of compliance decreases with the more inebriation that's happening. So like if you're sat there with your mates, it like I agree, it all sounds a very nice premise, but 2 hours into a 4 hour sitting, you've had like maybe 3 or 4 impy stouts, and you're kind of going, oh yeah, there's so and so over there. Like, not saying that you would personally, but
no, I take your point. I do take your point.
Unless they're going to rugby tackle someone at the ground, or actually literally have lines of people between tables, and then it feels like Gestapo sponsored beer festival. You're not moving from your seat. Like, I think Bring On the Beer in his tweet made a really good point. We are in totally surreal times. Like, we went to a pub near us that does food, and our food's really nice and the service was really good. It all just felt really alien and sterile compared to what you would normally experience. You go down to a pub in your local town, you'll bump into someone you know, and you're like, oh yeah, great, let's have a chat, and you can't do any of that. So it's a question of how, if they're determined to police it and they do actually police it, fair play to them. But I would, even if someone was dangling that in front of me and saying, would you go to that beer festival? As nice as it all sounds, I'd still be a no. But
don't you think there is an element that, as much as everyone is going to wait until things go back to normal, they may never do?
Well, yeah, like there is an element of that, but I think in the absence of a vaccine and an absence of demonstrated control of the spread of the virus, not just in the UK and Ireland, but around Europe, around the world, that, you know, we live in a world economy now. Like, it's very difficult for countries to justify keeping borders open and having green lists and approved lists and non-approved lists and all this kind of stuff, because eventually then lobbying will start happening, and all of a sudden you're letting in people from Dallas, Texas, which is one of the highest rates of infection in the US. So I think it's just a little bit soon, but if this was like in February's time, if governments around Europe, like, for example, have got their shit together and they're managing it, and it's all like levels of community transmission are really low, and the contact tracing and identifying people is really strong, then yeah, you can. But there's no country really, with the exception of New Zealand, that has demonstrated the ability to track and trace and quarantine so quickly that I'm aware of. And we have our troubles with it here. It takes 2 days to get a COVID-19 test result here. I don't know how long it takes in the UK.
Between 24 and 48 hours.
Unless you're getting a test the same day, contact tracing it's already on a losing battle because they're 2 days behind. So for me, I agree with looking for the positives. Generally, I'm an optimistic person, but I just think this year before Christmas is a bit too soon.
Fair enough. Well, so any other thoughts from you, Steve, on this one?
No. I mean, for me, it's too soon as well. I won't be rushing back to beer festivals just yet. I'm quite enjoying having my own beer festivals at home. You know, curating my own beer lists, or doing things like the beers that we're drinking tonight. You know, buying into some of those things where you've got some of the online suppliers are putting together virtual beer festivals. So I'm quite happy to continue doing that until it's safe to really be back in a large crowd.
Like I said, I like what they're trying to do, but I wouldn't be going myself. So, but I will be interested to hear how it goes, and fingers crossed it does go well, just because I don't want another spike anyway, apart from anything else.
Agree.
Yeah, I think this one and the Bristol Craft Beer Festival in September, I think once you get past mid-September, you're probably running out of time to do any beer festivals anyway, because you lose your outside space.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear from any of our listeners if they're going to either of them, and to let us know how the events are. And whether they felt as though they were safe and well managed. That would be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if anyone's got any other thoughts about it in general.
Yeah, I mean, we had obviously on this loads of comments this week. We couldn't feature them all. There is a link in the show notes. If you want to click through on that, you can see all of the comments that were made. You can keep the discussion going, use the hashtag opinions, and you may very well find yourself in this next part of the show.
Let us know, write it down. Let us know, write it down. Let us know your thoughts and bitter and lingerness. Write it down.
So first up from Lee at Brew York, who got in touch following last week's show. Just wanted to say thank you for another great podcast. I was thrilled to play it to the team in the brewery the other day and ensure that Roddy got the plaudits he deserved for his work with Go Big and Stay Home. I especially enjoyed the fade out music, which I can't name as that act definitely isn't signed to a label that also happens to be the studio we got into a lot of trouble with a recent release for honouring one of their films. Shame you guys are going back to fortnightly, but in another way, I guess that means like it's getting somewhere nearer normal, so not bad at all. Been great to get an extra dose of your show through this period. As always, keep up the great work. And then from Jack Renders at Renders_Jack, loving the snippets. Your show has kept me sane and changed my drinking and beer buying habits over lockdown. Thank you, Martin and Steve.
That's very nice. Thank you, Jack. And to Lee's brew team, I'm just really sorry you had to listen to us while you're trying to work.
But you're having to listen to us every week as well. At least they're going to get a break soon.
Yeah, so I think what Lee's saying is that the brew team are really pleased that you're going to every other week again. From Ian Hay at II Hay, cracking episode as usual. Hope you do get back to some of those long episodes, though. I enjoy them. I keep telling people, be careful what you wish for. Seriously. From Mark Johnson, lovely snippet. Although as my own normality starts to resume, I welcome the return of the fortnightly show so I can keep up.
From Pete at Pete Drinks a Beer. Great episode, guys. I wonder if CAMRA could undertake a review of member benefits and see what similar organisations offer, maybe focusing more on social events on and offline and advocacy elements instead of discounts and newsletters, etc. Very much feeding into last week's discussion.
It's good. It's a good question, actually.
Yeah, very good. And with that, we are coming to the end of the second beer that we've been drinking this evening. Janice has been supping her whiskey there alongside the porter. I'm intrigued to see how that combination's going, Janice.
It's a Tullamore Dew whiskey as well.
Oh,
so
lovely.
Nice. Yeah. One of my better ideas.
Is it complementing the beer?
Yeah. Do you want me to go again? Beer. Whiskey. Oh yeah. Beer again.
Works so well as an audio medium, that does.
Absolutely delicious.
Oh god.
I'll sleep well tonight.
Wayne, how's your second beer been?
I just noticed the packaging. It was packaged just before Christmas last year, so that's been dwelling in the fridge for about 8 months. But it kind of just tastes really like a bit of an amped up version of the pale ale. A little bit more of a chewy body. It's lost a little bit of the vibrancy on the nose, I think, but it definitely can be traced back to Sierra Nevada pale ale. Definitely nice.
Excellent. I bet that would have been nicer a couple of months earlier, mate.
Yeah, I'm extremely guilty of that all the time.
Yeah.
Go in the fridge, it's like, oh, I totally forgot I had that beer. Whoops.
Martin, how's the Titanic Stout been?
Almost 4.5 years on from when I last had it, and I'm still really loving it. It is a little bit smoky and roasty, very dry, a nice dry finish. I suppose it probably comes under Irish dry stout category. Really easy to drink, 4.5%. You could easily neck a few of these. It's warmed up nicely as well. So yeah, really enjoyable. What about your one, Steve?
The Hobsons Postman's Knock, the Rich Ruby Porter. It's a straight up adjunct free traditional porter. It's drinking really easy. It's got really kind of roasted feel to it. Finishes quite bitter, but not so much so that it's stripping your palate. It's one that you just keep going back in and drinking over and over again. We've all got final beers in glasses this evening. So starting with our guests again first, what are you drinking to finish off with this evening, guys?
My last one is from Oh Brother Brewing down in just outside Dublin and Bray, actually, or Kilcool. Turning Point IPA. So this is part of their off the wall. They partner up with like local graffiti artists for the labels. So they've had some pretty epic labels. So they've also had some pretty bloody banging beers as well. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into this.
I have gone for a dark lager from Lineman.
Continuing on the dark theme, have you still got the whiskey going there, Janice?
Oh yeah, still have the.
I'm surprised you two haven't cracked open an Impy Stout. I really am.
Oh, I was tempted, but
the temptation was there. But we have work tomorrow.
He has to drive in the morning.
Fair enough. Martin, what's your final beer this evening?
I've got an Oakham beer, but it's maybe not the Oakham people might have expected. It's not Citra. It's the Jeffrey Hudson Bitter, better known as JHB, 4.2%. Basically, it's a blonde ale. So I'm pretty certain I've had this previously, but just not for a while. But I always trust Oakham anyway.
It's an absolute classic, that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I am on the Sambrook's Battersea Rye, handcrafted specialty rye, 5.8%. So it's been a while since I've had a beer from Sambrook's, and certainly the first time I've had one in a can from them as well.
Well, the cans are a pretty recent addition, not unlike a lot of other people over the last 6 months as well. I think I had the Battersea Rye when I went there for the 10th anniversary, their 10th birthday party. I remember quite enjoying it, actually.
Well, should we dive in and see?
Yep.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. I'm going to ask you, Steve. You're pulling a face. I mean, it's not the sour face. It's a different face. It's a man of many faces for podcasting. What do you think of the Battersea Rye?
It's a tasty beer, but I'm confused as to what it actually is, style-wise, because flavour-wise, it's very it's quite sweet. There's quite a bit of raisin notes going on in that, and not really a lot of the spicy characteristics that you might associate with a rye beer on the finish.
Yeah, I had a look at my check-in earlier, and that's the one thing I noted was it didn't have that spicy characteristic, and actually I quite enjoyed it because of that. Sometimes that spicy rye characteristic, I think, takes away from the rest of the beer. Whereas I think with that one you've got there, it's a very well-rounded rye beer.
It is, but for me, it's one of those things that if a beer says it's supposed to be something and it doesn't then actually do the thing it says it's supposed to be.
Well, it's got rye in it.
Well, yeah, but I can't. It's not.
It doesn't have to be spicy. Like a wheat beer doesn't have to smell a banana.
Okay, fair point. I'll back down on that one. It is a tasty beer though. It is like drinking. It's like drinking fruitcake. It almost tastes like a baby barley wine.
Well, maybe you should get a second one and just leave it in the back of the cupboard for a few years
to develop a little bit.
See what happens to it.
Yeah.
What about our guests' final beers? What do they think? Janice.
Janice enjoys that one that she's just taken a sip of.
It was Wayne's one, and it's delicious.
So, Wayne, what's Janice's beer like?
Janice's beer is also actually very good as well.
I just don't think it was the right choice for me after a porter.
Probably not. Probably should have gone the other way around.
Yeah, probably.
Finished off with the porter and whiskey and had that one in between.
Well, yeah.
I did ask her, did she want a third beer? And she said, no, I'll be fine with two.
I wasn't gonna even have a third one, but I felt pressured into it.
Oh, come on. Janice, I don't think you've ever been pressured.
Definitely not. There's that rubber arm. No, mine's actually very, very tasty. I just did it in the wrong order, but it's a very good beer.
Yeah, I'm drinking another IPA, Cal Surprise. From our brother, it's not as aggressive as the Whiplash one. It's a little bit more subtle. It's got 2 hops in it. I don't think I've definitely had Strata before, but I don't ever recall having a beer with Meridian in it. But it's just a nice.
First time I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, I've never heard of it myself.
Yeah.
It's actually just a really nice. A little bit of stone fruit, a little bit of citrus, not very bitter, but it's just a nice beer. It doesn't have that sharp, citrusy, sherbety finish that the Whiplash one did, but I really enjoy it. Like, again, our brother brewing or another brewery that we're big fans of.
How's the JHB, Martin?
As it describes, like crisp and refreshing. Citra is obviously one of the single hop benchmark beers from the UK over the last 10 years, alongside Jarl, which we mentioned a few weeks ago. But this is a much more, probably well balanced. It's much more rounded than the Citra, not as punchy or as bitter. Definitely a more of a beer you would just chuck down your neck for 3, 4, 5 pints. And I'm really enjoying it out of the bottle, actually. I can't remember the last time I had it out of the bottle, but now I've got it again. And if I'm correct, I'm pretty certain my local co-op has this in bottles as well. So I might, a few of these might end up in the beer cupboard soon.
Going to be stocking up on that, yeah?
Yeah. It's actually really good. 4.2%, very easy. The cask version apparently is less. It's 3.8%.
Oh, one of those where there's two different strengths.
Yeah, and also I don't. Some beers I've noticed do that, but I don't know why. With this one, 4.2% is pretty much as sessionable as 3.8 to my mind. So yeah, no, it's an interesting one.
The only other one,
Mount Hood. Sorry, have you heard of the Mount Hood hop?
Yeah.
No.
So you have, Wayne, because I haven't. So this is hopped with Challenger and Mount Hood. I've never heard of the Mount Hood hop either.
See, now mine's actually got hops listed on the bottom as well, and it's got Bramling Cross, which I've heard of before, and then it's got WGV and Northdown. I can't say I've ever heard of those two hops.
No. It's a bit of a hop journey tonight, Steve, for us.
It is. It's almost like those flavour doors are opening again, mate.
Flavour doors. You could almost turn that into one word, couldn't you? Flavour door.
Yes, yeah. Well, while we're just finishing these, we've got one question this week. Questions fill my head. Which was from Mark Johnson. And he says, since pubs reopened, my at-home drinking has dropped by about 95% and is currently a lot less than it was before all this happened. Has your own dropped much, and how does it compare to pre-COVID? Pie charts in the show notes, welcome. Now, I can promise you now, Mark, there are going to be no pie charts in the show notes. But we will discuss this. So personally, for me, I'm probably still drinking the same at home as I was before, during, and now. Because I'm still not going out an awful lot. Even pre-COVID, my job doesn't necessarily have a commute to it, so I'm not going to and from a place. I don't have that kind of pattern of popping into the pub after work with workmates. I generally only used to go to the pub maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and one of those was always the Essex Bottle Share. So I think mine is probably about the same, actually. I'm probably still drinking as much as home as I have done in the last 6, 12, 18, 24, 48 months.
That's because you're unsociable, Steve. We've established that.
I am largely unsociable, yeah, and I do dislike people. I don't like crowds, and yeah, I don't like to be in a forced situation where I actually have to talk to other people.
What, you mean like a podcast?
Yeah.
Yes,
So how does that work?
Yeah. No. I think I'm just generally not one. I'm a home creature. I like being at home.
I suppose my answer to the question is, because unlike you, Steve, my commute was to and from London by train. So there may be the possibility of a lunchtime bevy or an after work bevy. But obviously that has gone over the last 6 months. By the time I go back to work, it'll be about 7 months. My overall drinking is probably about the same, but I still work on the same premise. But I'm aiming for around about 3 dry days a week, depending how I decide to work my weeks, whether it be a 1 week or 2 week rota, because I used to get in the habit of every 2 weeks because I had Michael every other weekend. So my total drinking is about the same. The at-home ordering has lessened a tad. I mean, definitely just a tad, because I have been out a few more times. But I try to just keep fairly much the same amount of drink being consumed, whether that be now that it's a combination of away from home and at home.
It's an interesting one for you folks, isn't it? Because you're still not going out yet, are you?
Not really, no.
Not really, no. It's During lockdown, when we couldn't go anywhere, we were drinking an awful lot more than we ever had done.
Yeah, like that's definitely tapered off. Like while I was doing the work for DHL, going over and back to Heathrow 3 times a week, like I was always stopping in Waitrose or Tesco or Morrison's to pick up whatever supermarket beers, lots of Keller Pills basically, and definitely. Initially, it was loads of online orders. Like just fridge was always full. We've definitely tapered it back a bit, but I think
we're back to our pre-COVID.
Yeah, I'd say we're about the same as pre-COVID now because I'm back in the office 5 days a week. Jan's back in the shop 5 days a week. Not having the pubs open while it is crap, it also means that I'm not going out for a couple of cheeky pints on a Saturday afternoon waiting for Janice to finish work and that kind of stuff.
But yeah, like
surreal.
now we just drink usually on a Saturday evening and Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, mainly.
I suppose the thing for me is still that because I am working from home and I haven't got to worry about the commute, that I will potentially, when I do have a drink of a school night, I will drink a bit later because I haven't got to worry about getting home and then getting up early the next day, getting on a train, getting into the office. There's definitely an element of that, and probably more tempted to have 1 or 2 bigger beers as an evening goes on, because there's actually the same reason. I know that I could probably still get, if you go to bed at midnight, I could still get 7 hours sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm still in the office long before 9 o'clock.
One of the things that this time has brought us is, as I mentioned earlier, the return of your podcast. It's been great listening to you guys having those what are essentially long form, just chilled discussions with various people about different things. And I know you guys don't like to be put on the spot regarding the podcast. Is this a regular return now? Are you back?
We're back.
Yeah, we are. It's the difficulty we found is trying to
nail
people down for, like, it's actually, the pandemic has made it slightly easier because it's not a we have to physically go somewhere and record now. We can go, look, if you have Skype on your mobile phone or if you have Zoom, we can just have a conversation, have a couple of beers, and it's kind of been the style we've always gone for. In like when we're talking to other people that are not just ourselves jabbering on about whatever nonsense we talk about, but it's been great to hear firsthand from our contributors how they have pivoted or what's changed for them. Like, obviously apart from the obvious, but to get real frontline kind of stories in that sense.
I think some of the stories have been brilliant. Some of the tales they've told, and the guy you were talking about who set up the online shop and has got the pizza brew pub.
Yeah.
Goodness knows how busy he must be now. He was sounded so busy before.
He did that alone.
Yeah.
He was doing all of that by himself because he couldn't have staff in there.
Yeah, that's just nuts. But no, I've really enjoyed hearing the different tales and stuff. So are you going to keep up the same sort of format, or will the format change?
The intention is probably to do 2 or 3 episodes of an interview type nature, and then go back to kind of like a summary, just the 2 of us talking about recent events. Because I suppose
sometimes we can't always nail people down.
We've always wanted our podcast to be a platform for people to tell their own story, and like they might just need a little bit of nudging or cajoling to kind of keep on track and everything. But it's really about them and their story. We just happen to be the space where they're able to come in and chat about it. And the more comfortable we can make them feel, we find the better the stories are. Like Stephen Clinch had a lot of really good stories. Unfortunately, we had to edit some of them out because of the connection wasn't great. But it's just like, we love, like, people buy off people ultimately, and we love to know what's going on behind the curtain, and to chat to people and where their head is at, where their thoughts are at. Like, even chatting to Brian, who is doing the virtual beer festivals and everything like that, is great to see where he's coming from, because he's similar. He just wants to give people that platform to show themselves to potentially a different audience that they wouldn't normally get. So yeah, that's the plan.
It's one of the things that will forever stick with me during this time is because during lockdown I did a lot of walking, and while I was walking, I was listening to podcasts, and a lot of that time was taken up listening to you guys just talking the shit with other people, and that's one of the memories that will forever stick with me is walking in the sun, listening to you guys talking about how beer is changing and how the scene is changing in Ireland. I'm almost at the end of my Battersea Rye. The one thing I'm going to say, and again, this is going to, on an audio podcast, a visual doesn't necessarily work, but look at the lacing on that pint from a can.
It looks like a cask beer lacing, mate.
It's proper lacing, and this is going down really well. Despite me moaning about the fact that it didn't taste enough of rye at the beginning, the fact that it's essentially tasting like a baby barley wine is ticking every single box that I need it to tick. So I am very, very happy with this beer.
Oh, so maybe this is the way forward. Trick you into thinking you're drinking a real barley wine, but give you a 5.8% Sambrooks.
Yeah.
Session barley.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say my JHB's almost gone, and I could easily tuck into another one or two. It's just a very easy drink. But Oakham, I think, I know what they do. Their DNA runs through all their beers. And, you could have a few JHBs, then maybe some Citra, and then go up to Green Devil. And that wouldn't be a bad session at all.
No, not all. And there is a great selection of beers in this box as well. And you also get tasting notes and a suggested running order as well, in which is if you want to do all 14 of those drinks in one evening, it does tell you the order in which you can gradually forget about your evening.
I'm looking forward to you doing the cider, Steve.
Yeah, that's not going to happen in a hurry.
No one hijacked the emoji roller coaster yet for that.
Not yet, mate. Not the emoji roller coaster. We are very, very grateful to the Best of British Beer for sending us across those boxes. As I say, there'll be a link in the show notes to where you can get one of those. They are it is a limited edition box, so if you do want to get one, I'm not sure how many of them will be left by the time that this podcast comes out and people listen to it. But if it is something that's up your street, certainly give that a go. Martin, what's coming up next time?
Beers? I don't think we've quite decided yet, have we, Steve? So
no, we're uncertain at the moment, but we'll decide that in the next few days.
Discussion will be the recent poll which we ran, which is about rounds. Do you still get involved? So
I'm looking forward to discussing that one.
There's plenty of comments on that as well, so it should be good fun.
Yeah. Wayne, Janice, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been lovely catching up with you guys. It always is. Where can people find you on the socials?
Instagram and Twitter is at Irish Beer Snob for me.
Twitter is at Mrs. Beer Snob, and Instagram is Mrs._Beer Snob.
All that's left to be said is it's been a wonderful evening. I hope our listeners enjoy listening to this as much as we've recorded it. Cheers.
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 Cheers.